Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We've got company episode 4. This is an episode that's very near and dear to my co-hosts and myself's heart.
It's my lucky number too.
Oh, look at that! See, we picked a good one for you for your lucky number. So again, got to introduce my co-host Dan. What's up, buddy?
How you doing, man?
Going on, man? We're ready to dive into this one faux show.
It's chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah. So we've got company episode 4. What we're going to talk about in this episode is we are going to go over the DC cinematic universe, and essentially its failures because there's really nothing good about it. There's not even
currently.
Currently, that's true. And I say cinematic universe, meaning films, right? Because we know, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We are very passionate about it, but before we go into that, I wanted to go over something. So in the late 70s, okay, there was a film that came out by Richard Donner called Superman, right? And starred Christopher Reeve. Richard Donner was, the director, and it was a mega success, especially for its time, okay? So essentially it was probably the first blockbuster superhero film really ever made, okay? And it was a DC character. So I just want to, also just side note, if anybody doesn't know, DC was around before Marvel, okay? DC had characters, right? So iconic characters like Superman. Superman 1, Superman 2 then came out, both amazing films, okay?
Yep.
They may not hold up as much now as far as what it looks like, but that's because we've seen such crazy innovation with technology. But if you watch the movies as a fan, you could still love them. And I remember dressing up as...
I think with a little bit of suspension of disbelief, the original Superman still holds weight. I think even with I know it's hard, for maybe some of our millennial listeners or people who are a little younger than us, that it's hard to sometimes go back and watch these old films. But I do think Superman is one of the few. Superman really, it really kind of holds up as a classic, and as a, I think that moment of the original Superman trailer. If you know, for anyone who doesn't, the original tagline for the trailer was that you will believe a man can fly. And those moments in the film still really ring true. They really feel like there are moments in that film that really kind of, but this, again, this could all just be my nostalgia bone.
Listen, that's your nostalgia thing, that's gonna be a thing. Like, there's no way around it, right? So now you have 1 and 2. And then you have 3 and 4, which are terrible films, right? They jumped the shark. They shouldn't have made them. And
they're objectively bad. Yeah, they're bad in a way where it's like, even if you were to just explain the facts of what happens narratively, someone would go, well, that's a bad thing. That's a bad story.
Exactly.
Even if you were told that story, you would be like, well, that sounds bad.
Right. It's just, you can't argue it. It's just bad. So now, so you have that, and then about 10 years later, right, 1989, I believe, Tim Burton, Batman, okay? 2 iconic superheroes, okay? Now, in between that, there were no blockbuster superhero movies between Superman 4 and Batman 1 in 89. And sure enough, Batman 1, huge success, blockbuster, probably even bigger than Superman, because of the marketing. Remember all the T-shirts that came out? Remember all the Joker T-shirts that people were wearing?
It was culturally gigantic. Like, there were people
humongous.
wearing. My dad was wearing Batman merch all the time. You know what I mean? He had a hat. He had the whole thing, and it was like, and I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back on it now, you kind of realize like what a cultural phenomenon it was.
It transcended the superhero stuff.
Absolutely.
Right. It went beyond that. Right. So Superman and Batman were already popular, amongst a lot of people, but
Yeah.
they were household names, but this was it, right?
Yeah.
You even had Prince, who came in and did like a lot of music for the soundtrack, and like it was a music video he had that was about the movie, whatever. So you have that. Then you have Batman Returns, which was not as successful, but it was still good. It's still a good movie. And then you have it's like the same exact thing, right? 3 and 4, terrible. Even though Val Kilmer was not a bad Batman.
He did his best.
He did his best, but
he did his best. He's not to blame.
Yeah, exactly. Within a terrible, campy script, he did
Joel
what
Schumacher
he could.
Is to blame without a doubt.
Without a doubt, right? So you have those two, right? Now, that being said, we're going to go into something about their failures, but this is not us criticizing or shitting on them because we're just shitting on them because we're not fans. We're actually shitting on them.
The DC universe.
Right.
I love DC Comics. I love DC superheroes. I love the mythology. I love its differentiation to Marvel, and we're gonna get into it.
Right. So that's what my point is, that we're not shitting on it. We're shitting on it because we're fans, right? And we're not happy about it, right?
Yeah.
So now you have all this time that passes, and Marvel is not exempt from their flops, because for a long time Marvel was making films that were terrible besides Blade, right?
And people would also argue that Marvel currently still is making a few terrible films within this universe, that you have your tentpole films like your Civil Wars and your Endgames,
right?
But in between that, you also have Thor: The Dark World.
Yes, but when you look at Thor: The Dark World and you look at Iron Man 2, those films are still not as bad as Batman Forever and you see, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're still good within the universe. But anyway, that's besides the point. That's another episode, like we always say. So now, I just wanted to give that little tidbit of information for maybe people that don't know about that and know those little things about what DC started and how big they were with these iconic characters. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, who's going to get us rolling.
So DC Comics, a lot of times, I feel like as a comic book fan, I've been asked a few times, kind of what would be the general difference between DC and Marvel characters. And I think that a very large difference between the two companies would be that Marvel characters have a sense of home to them. The Marvel characters are mostly people. They're people that you and I know. They live in real neighborhoods. Like they all, Marvel characters live in New York. They live in New York or California. Like Spider-Man comes from Queens. That is a canonical fact. He is from Queens. Whereas DC characters come a little earlier than Marvel. So a current analog for DC characters would just essentially be that they're kind of gods in a way. Like the DC characters don't really, to put it as specifically as possible, the Justice League characters, the top echelon of DC comic book characters are essentially gods. Like Superman is a god. Superman can do, and if you look at the earliest Superman comic books, if you were to look at those for a little while, you would see that he essentially used to have the power to do anything. He was able to do anything and everything. He's a god, for lack of a better terminology. And the same for Batman. Grant Morrison, one of my favorite Batman writers, has commonly referred to Batman as the Bat God, whereas he is infallible. He's infallible as in ideals, and he's infallible in his actions. He is absolute, and he is the greatest detective in the world, and he has all the right answers, and he is a good person, and he's a god. The Flash
amongst men.
Yeah. The Flash is the fastest man alive. The Flash can change time and has changed the fabric of the entire DC universe as a whole. Yeah, with stories like Flashpoint, they've taken this character who, in its inception, can run really fast, and essentially turned him into a kind of time god that can change the universe as a whole. So now, with that being said, I think that a lot of DC's kind of issues in the modern era of making this universe has a lot to do with the scale. Marvel starts on
An
the
interesting
Marvel
point.
the Marvel films start on a very close-knit scale. The scale of the Marvel film starts very close. It's very internal. It has to do with the world. And
Yeah.
Iron Man is the beginning, and Iron Man is about America, and it's about an American.
It's relatable.
Yeah, these are all stories that you can kind of hear and see and go, well, you can be Tony Stark. Like people can be a flawed human that's capable of great things. We all want to believe
that's a good point. A lot of Marvel characters, when they're outside of being the superhero, they're very flawed, and that's kind of what made them as popular as they were, because people could relate to them.
Right. Spider-Man is the greatest superhero that has ever been, because we are all Spider-Man. We can all be Spider-Man.
Right.
Now, Superman is completely unrelatable. As a character, Superman is a being not born of Earth, who was brought here, who has never been a regular person. He has no idea what it's like to be a regular person. And I don't want to get into the kind of the end of Kill Bill argument about Superman. I honestly don't find that to be true. I don't think that that's the idea that Superman looks down on the human race. I don't really find
that part. I don't know if that was just Quentin Tarantino's kind of way to kind of whatever. That was his own thing. But I think that he was right with the whole personalities or the secret identity thing.
Right.
He's right about that.
He is always Superman. Superman is who he is. Clark Kent is not. Is the identity is not Superman. The secret identity is Clark Kent. And he is the true meaning of a secret identity. And Batman is the same way. Bruce Wayne is the costume. Batman is who he is always.
Right.
He
Even
is
in
always
the sense
Batman.
where like Alfred and will tell him, like, you have to go out and be this playboy that you're not. Right. That's not really him. So Batman is really him. Yeah, it's the same thing with Batman.
Batman can at least, even though Batman himself is also kind of an infallible character and a character that's very hard to relate to, you at least know that Batman is a person. However, Superman is, he's American Jesus. Like he is essentially America's Christ. Like he is a godlike figure that no one can ever truly relate to. You know what I mean? And I don't think that he has a kind of he has no contempt for the human race. He loves people, and he loves kind of the way people are, and this is all great. But I think what happens is right now, and I think modern films really kind of have driven home the point of realism. In modern films, what people have wanted to see is characters that feel tangible, and Marvel delivers that in spades.
Right. Even with their beings that are out of this world and don't fit within a human element or whatever.
Exactly.
They even tell those stories and make it relatable, like a Thor.
Exactly. So the long and short of it is that I believe that Marvel stories are much more relatable than DC stories are. That is to say that that's not impossible to make a relatable DC story. So what's happened here? Like, what's happened with the DC universe as a whole? Why has it been so difficult for these guys to make a universe out of this series? And I think that the short answer is Marvel. The short answer is that Marvel has these characters that are all just people. These are all just folks. These are all people thrown into insane situations. These aren't gods. Whereas DC, you dissect the Justice League, and it's all gods. Wonder Woman is made of clay. Wonder Woman was created by literal Greek gods are in discussion here. Even Shazam we're talking about literal,
Yeah, that's
godlike,
mythical things. Yeah,
completely
right.
huge scale, gigantic things. Whereas
Which is why
Marvel,
I just want to throw this in there because I'm sure we'll revisit it. Which is why they had to write Batman the way that they had to write him, because it's the only way that he can exist amongst all these people and be able to be a viable hero within
yeah.
these. Because if not, he would just die.
Well,
Like,
that goes into, yeah, and that goes into like a whole kind of argument about Batman within the Justice League as a whole, you know.
right,
And then I think that what Marvel's done is that Marvel has grown into this scale. Marvel now is at the scale of a Captain Marvel, and you have Thanos, and they're going in and out of space, and all this stuff has happened. But you've seen this happen over a decade of time. You
right,
know, within a decade, you have seen the growth and the
yeah,
kind of like expansion of the universe.
right. You can
Now,
almost
with
take it in better because of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah, that's a good point.
to start from modern times, and then maybe we'll go back, but to start from modern times, what DC did was, or what Warner Brothers did, to be fair, is Warner Brothers saw what Marvel was doing and tried to grasp that as soon as possible.
Right.
And they tried to launch into the universe almost immediately without any kind of, you know, slow start, without even a gallop. They go right into, this is all happening, it's a universe, and there's all these characters and everything
Right.
like that. This is all
Right.
happening right now. In the first Superman movie of the modern generation, almost all of Metropolis is destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like they almost they practically blow up the world, which is kind of an incredible, going back to Man of Steel now, I find really interesting, because I think that if you were to watch it as a fan of Superman, or as a fan of the Superman comics and the Superman character, there's nothing for you there. You know,
No.
there's not a
No.
single person that gets saved. He
Nope.
doesn't really help
He's
anyone.
a whole other character. It's not
Yeah, he's an
what
entirely,
Superman was written like, or
exactly,
has been
complete.
ever been portrayed as.
Yeah, he lacks empathy. He is,
Yeah.
you know, a character that isn't really Superman for the people who love him. However, I think that as far as, if you ever wanted to see what it would be like for Superman to just cut loose with another villain,
To
whoever it
really
might
exist.
be,
Right.
it's a great example of that. You know,
Right.
it's such an entertaining example of, like, if Superman did exist in the world, and if this was happening, this actually might be a little more realistic as to how it might be,
Without a
with,
doubt.
you know, just the absolute amount of destruction and everything
Right.
like that. I do think that that film is very flawed, and is not empathetic, or it's a bit of a mean-spirited film.
Yes.
You know, I think the moment where Superman is making out with Lois amidst a deserted
Yeah, that was just,
city with
it's
crumbled
just
buildings,
so insensitive.
it just
It's the
seems a little
wrong time. It was
strange.
the wrong time for a kiss.
Yeah,
No
I
matter
think
what. It was the wrong time for any kind of
romantic moment.
romantic moment at all, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
especially for Superman, especially
yeah.
for him and how he's been written and what he's supposed to be like.
God,
He
absolutely.
would be the first person to not want to kiss there.
Yeah, well, for
Right.
one thing, when I first saw the film, I thought, like, what should be, you know, in the background you have this kind of crescendo of music and this really kind of romantic moment, because they want you to feel what you're
Right.
supposed to be feeling. But all I thought was just like, there's so many people dead
So many.
behind him. There's so many people dead. And I thought, like, how amazing would it be if, like, in the moment of Superman making out with Lois and holding her close, if there was just the sound of children screaming in the
Yeah.
background,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know, like,
that's
just
right.
crumbling. It
You
just
mean
sound the
you mean what
sounds.
really would be happening?
Yeah, like what would really be happening? It would just be just the screams of the innocent.
Right. Yeah. So speaking, so now we're getting into that. I want to talk about that because one of the major issues, right, that made this whole thing a problem, right, was A, what you said, which completely agree, it's rushed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And B, and I think, my opinion, one of the most important problems or issues is that Man of Steel wasn't made to be a starter movie for a universe.
Right. It wasn't supposed to kick off a franchise. It was supposed to be a film about this character specifically.
Right. So now that's like taking something that you make that only fits in a certain, like a square peg in a round hole, right? And then trying to keep continuing to fit it into something that you can't fit it in. It doesn't make sense
at all.
Because when you originally had this idea and made this movie, the other things weren't a thing.
At all. It didn't exist. There was no idea. And isn't it kind of amazing when you know, not to get off topic a little bit, but isn't it kind of amazing what Marvel has done on a scale of film? You know, Marvel has basically made it so that if you're not creating a universe, why even have a film? You know, like
unheard of what they did.
It's unreal. You know,
it's
like
unreal. They did something that nobody had ever done before.
Yeah, and it's the seeing it spread to other genres has been particularly interesting. You know, like seeing it spread to even the Bourne franchise.
Yeah,
and James Bond coming up. You know,
James,
you're an expert.
So James Bond, that's an argument that, you know, we could have.
Because
James Bond was doing something like this in the 60s when it came out. Because even while Bond, the actors were changing, the world around the actor was the same,
right?
In a lot of sense. So they did create a universe. I mean, there's 22 of them. You know, like it's insane. But anyway,
yeah. So I think that so to go back, where we really want to see where DC went wrong, I think we'd have to go back to the beginning, where you were saying the Richard Donner Superman films and the Tim Burton Batman films. I think that what those movies did was they made you believe a man could fly, and they made you believe that Batman was there. There was a believability to what these characters were doing. Now, what I find interesting is that nowadays we're kind of in this uncanny valley of special effects where you can have anything be done. You know, you can have any character do anything, and any amount of powers can actually be displayed, which is something that as kids, you and I used to say a Spider-Man movie could never happen, because you would need all of this. You would need the character to be there and to be real. And you need to have the ability to, the suspension of disbelief that a character is there slinging webs. And you know, there was a time where that seemed impossible. You know,
I mean, they had that old show that was like in the 70s or something. But I'm sure that even, I mean, listen, we weren't alive, so we don't know. But I just find it hard to believe that even back then, the people that didn't have didn't have the new kind of CGI or technology, they probably watched it and were even like, this is awful.
Oh my God. He looks like he's throwing yarn. Like it just looks like it's like he's holding onto a ball of yarn and just flinging it.
They're like action.
Action. It's just,
oh God.
So yeah, it just, you know, we with the advent of CGI, we're able to kind of bring these gods to life.
Yeah.
Now, big problem came. So when did the Dark Knight, not the Dark Knight, when did Batman Begins come out?
So I think that's 05, 06. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So 05, 06 is when Dark Knight came out. Now the Dark Knight is
2008's The Dark Knight.
All right, I'm sorry. I meant Batman Begins. 2008 is definitely Dark Knight. 2006 is Batman Begins. Batman Begins marks a huge turning point, I think, in not just superhero cinema, but fictional cinema as a whole. You know, like I think that the Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, that 1-2 punch, I think, is largely responsible for the growing of comic culture. You know, and
yeah, it's almost like an Iron Man wouldn't exist.
Oh my God!
If it weren't for
absolutely not. There's just no way. There's no way.
And Iron Man, for the record, is for Iron Man, for the record, is basically Marvel's answer to Batman.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, absolutely.
That's a fact, right?
Yeah,
so,
that is a hardcore fact.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, Batman Begins really kind of doesn't get enough credit. You know, it's known as an amazing film and it's a loved film. I you know, kind of feel silly saying it doesn't get enough credit, but it really doesn't. Because
I think so. I'll say that maybe it doesn't get enough credit. Right. I agree with you. What I'm saying is I think that because it grounded itself so much and it's such a great movie besides the superhero stuff, that it doesn't get the credit as from the comic book circle.
Right. So here's what happened with comic book films as a whole. Now, when you go to the Richard Donner years of the original Superman, that changed the Superman comic book. The Superman comic book was then written to be a more humanized Superman with less powers, not as strong. Because as I said before, Superman used to essentially be able to do anything. You know, like it was unreal. If you look back on old Superman comics for fun and you want to see what he was able to do, he was essentially able to do anything. Very similar to Superman, the second Superman, where he removes his symbol and imprisons these aliens inside of his symbol. It makes no sense at all when you're watching the film. But when you look at old Superman comics, you're like, yeah, it checks out.
Yeah, he could do whatever.
He could do anything.
I mean, even in the is it the no? It's the first one is where he sets the world back in time.
Yeah, he reverses the world, which we can. That's a whole other episode that we can go back on from our second episode about scientific fallacies.
Oh, and, right.
Reversing the Earth is a big one. Reversing the flow of time.
Because even Superman, who we say can pretty much do anything, right? Even though he can, just what he did to turn it back doesn't make sense because
time isn't because the world spins.
The world spins a certain way. Right?
No,
so
that's not the way that works. It's the world isn't like operating like a clock and spinning a certain way. Like bringing that back doesn't bring back time. It would destroy the world, which is a whole other movie. It's him like getting so angry about his girlfriend dying that he blows up the Earth. Which
because he doesn't understand that that's. But anyway,
an amazing alternate ending to that movie.
Right.
But so superhero films. Now I want to go back to Superman and I want to go back to Batman, but I want to talk about there was a time where superhero films and comic books as a whole were being made into films, but essentially they were always thought as being less than films.
Yes.
You know, the storytelling was thought to be a kind of lesser format than the film. The film was, is this other art form, and translating a comic book to film means you have to make it applicable for movie-going audiences. Right. Now, what a mistake made for years by film producers and production companies was that the movie-going audience was different than the comic reading audience. You know, they felt that these forms of entertainment were different and that these people aren't consuming the same thing. And now what we know now and what we finally have realized is that the people consuming the comic books were also going to see films. Right. And there's nothing about a superhero that is unappealing to, the majority of people. The majority of people want to watch a person do amazing things. So you have a lot of films used to not give a terrible amount of respect to its comic book counterparts. And for that, I'd like to...
And still don't. I mean, you see what Scorsese says and what...
Yeah, well, Scorsese, you know what? Scorsese saying that didn't bother me so much, only because I thought... It
didn't bother me either. Like, I didn't care, but he said...
I didn't care, because it's like, it's not for him. It's not for Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese, he didn't read Iron Man. Like Martin Scorsese doesn't know, he didn't get excited when Onslaught killed the X-Men or
right,
when
right.
Thanos made the snap. He
Yeah.
doesn't know about those things, and
Right.
and that's totally fine. I think that I I don't want to even talk badly about
Yeah.
Martin
Yeah.
Scorsese.
I know.
It's just I don't think it applies to him.
Yes.
It
Yes.
wasn't.
It
These aren't
definitely.
movies.
It's not even a thought. It definitely doesn't
Yeah,
apply to him. Yeah.
yeah. These movies aren't made for people like him.
Right.
It's
Anyway.
not for
Anyway.
everyone.
I'm sorry. That was my fault. But go
No,
ahead.
no. But yeah. What you get is a lot of for years films were thought of as like the kind of upper echelon art form, whereas comic books are considered, for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You and I, growing up comic fans, we've been through this our whole lives. People not understanding the way, you know, this form of entertainment.
Yeah.
So comic books have always looked down. Were always looked down upon by the film industry. So you have these like the 70s Captain America, for example, and these early examples of these films where they're trying to simplify everything and make everything easily digestible for a
Right.
film audience, and
Camp.
yeah,
Campy.
camp, exactly. Making it as easily digestible as possible for a film-going audience.
Right.
It's essentially kind of an insulting of the intelligence of the film-going audience.
Right.
Now,
Meanwhile, the comic books themselves were not written that way.
oh my God, absolutely
It,
not. You and I
it
have actually talked about this at length, where there are a lot of even social issues, modern social issues and
oh my
economic
God.
and
The
political issues that
X-Men.
you and I are like, this
Yeah.
is still going on. Like
Yep.
X-Men tackled this, like
X-Men was talking. They did all this crap. I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, we again another
Yeah. Yeah.
episode
I mean,
about
we did. Yeah. But
the
anyway, we're going back.
moral
So
vitality of
yeah,
comic book fans.
exactly.
But yeah, so Superman is released is an amazing movie. It changes the comic book industry. It changes the film industry. Batman, hugely popular, but in between, I want to pay specific attention to the first X-Men film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first X-Men film, in fact, the X-Men trilogy is a great example of kind of the differentiation between the movie industry and the comic book industry at that time, and them trying to merge the two.
Right.
Now, the X-Men films didn't believe that you can believe the X-Men. They didn't
Right.
think you can see the X-Men the way they are in the comic book and be presented with that as an idea that's worth going to pay your hard-earned dollars to go see.
Right. Right.
So they put them in, what do we know? We know what's successful. What's successful? Batman. What did Batman wear? Black rubber spandex, black rubber, really, leathery, gritty, that kind of atmosphere.
Right.
And so they did that for X-Men, and they presented X-Men in a package that the film studio thought would be more appetizing to the general public. Now, what Batman Begins did is Batman Begins took this property and took these characters and this story, and it said, I'm going to take this 100% seriously. And I'm
Right.
not going to look at it as this needs to be changed and translated for the film going audience. Instead, it took a story and it did the story.
Right.
Batman Begins is
essentially what it did was it took it how it was written.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it took it how it was
just
written.
took it the way it was supposed to be, and it drove it home. It made the adaptation. It made a correct adaptation. It didn't insult the comic book. It didn't insult
Right.
the artists and creators and writers. And for years, movies would change the stories of comic book characters and alter things so that in order to make it more digestible for a film-going audience.
What they felt would make it digestible.
What they felt would make it more digestible for a film-going audience.
Sure.
Which is essentially just discounting a film-going audience and discounting what people want out of a film.
Right.
And what Batman Begins did, and an Iron Man did in the future, was that it took these stories and it gave them the treatment that these stories deserved. It gave the creators the respect that they were owed. you know, and it truly took these stories and took them and just put them on the screen the way they were meant to be. It didn't alter it. It didn't make it easily digestible. It didn't insult your intelligence. They took the story and they put it on the screen. And that was the beginning, you know, like that was that was the start of everything. You know, so it's interesting to look back on it now. When you watch Iron Man now, to know that comic book films prior to Iron Man, you know, would never have had Tony Stark within a red and gold suit. It just never would have happened.
Which is what he really has and looks like.
It's what he has, you know. And when you look at those characters, you never would have thought
the silver suit that it was like his prototype. It would have been that, or like a black suit or whatever.
Exactly. And then when this, I think the, you know, the Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man was another like real strong Kickstarter for the idea that these comic books don't need to be changed that much.
Right.
You know, they don't need to be altered in order to suit a film going audience. Maybe a film going audience wants to see this.
Sure.
You know, so going off on a tangent, but to bring it back to the DC universe, I think like a really big issue that the DC universe has had is the relatability of its characters. And the relatability of its characters in conjunction with the growth of the series itself. You know, we went right into a universe. We went right into this is how it all has to be.
So that goes back now to what I was saying, essentially, right, about how Man of Steel was not meant to be a Kickstarter movie for a universe, and then they saw what Marvel was doing, and they wanted the cash, right? They wanted in on it, right? And they wanted to use characters that they knew people like you and I would all go see because we're huge fans, and they were like, screw it, we're gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
So you know, that was I think the main problem was that they rushed it, right? I think that they should have had Man of Steel, and they could have kept Man of Steel, but don't make Batman the next movie that you make Batman's movie, and make it look like because one thing I want to say is that the way Snyder did his films, I liked how they looked visually.
You know what? That's a contended thing. A lot of people didn't. If you remember at the time, a lot of people did not like the way those films looked. A lot of people said they were too dark and very gritty, but I am with you on that. Like I honestly found those movies, like the unique look of them, to be kind of an interesting change of pace from what Marvel was doing.
Right, and Batman, believe it or not, when he was first introduced to us in this DC cinematic universe, he looked the most like the comic book that he has ever looked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that suit, Ben Affleck, I'm sorry.
My favorite.
It's my favorite suit.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
It looks like The Dark Knight Returns.
Yep.
I think Ben Affleck visually was a great Batman.
I think
great
he did a
Bruce
great
Wayne.
job.
Yeah.
What about you know, the criticism of the voice? I loved the voice.
The voice was great because it made so much sense.
Yeah,
that he would have he's a rich genius billionaire that would create something to change his voice. Not that what Christian Bale did, but Christian Bale had a great rebuttal to his voice thing. I don't know if you've ever heard what he said, but what he said was, Christian Bale said, the reason why I did this with this voice, it was the only way. Now, we all know Christian Bale is like a very method actor. I mean, he goes deep, okay?
Yeah.
He said in an interview, this was the only way that I, myself, can believe that I am this character.
Right.
So once he said that, I was like, you know what? I love that you did it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to argue that point with you.
Yeah, right? I think that's a great choice.
It makes total sense. He's like, how am I going to make myself believe, to give the audience the best performance? I have to make myself believe that I am this person, and this is how I feel this person would do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, going off of that, right? So I enjoyed the look of Batman in the cinematic universe.
Yeah, I believe the Snyderverse, you know, like the Snyder universe, visually is I, I love it.
It looks, yeah,
I
dude.
love
This
it.
is
Like I
my next
love
point.
it.
This is coming to my next point. I have found myself. I have found myself watching Batman v Superman just because of what it looks like.
Yeah.
Because I
It looks
hate the
so
movie.
awesome. It's
I
not a
hate
good movie at all.
I hate the movie. It's a terrible movie, but
But
I find
God,
myself
Batman
watching
looks
it.
so awesome in it.
Exactly.
It's
So,
like,
so now, right? So we shared that we have this.
yeah.
I feel like we're not the only. Obviously, a lot of people.
Yeah,
Must
I
feel
think
this
a
way.
lot of people feel this way. I think a lot of
Right.
people agree with us. I think a lot of people, and here's the funniest thing about the DC universe is the fans, people can say what they want, but the fans of comics, the fans of comics, fans of the DC universe, who are also fans of the Marvel universe, they're not mutually exclusive. As much as people want you to believe that they're the PlayStation and Xbox of comic books, they
Right.
aren't.
Yeah.
They really aren't. Almost any comic fan you talk to, I guarantee you, there's going to be very few of them that have some sort of company loyalty.
Right.
Because who are you being loyal to?
Yeah. It's
They're
dumb.
not. They're not paying you.
It's
You're not.
pointless.
Yeah, there's no reason to be loyal to a company. But in
Sure.
terms of the characters, you want them both to succeed. When people
Right.
ask me if who I like more, I want them both to be great. I want
Yeah.
both companies to make fantastic films. I want
Right.
a
So we're
great
just
Justice League film.
entertained, right? It's not a competition for us.
No, not at all.
we
Which
want them all to
much,
be great.
yeah, exactly. Which is much like the console war, where you're just like, I mean, we're supposed to win out of this.
Right.
We
Right.
win
Well,
no
and how
matter
many
what.
people have Xbox and PlayStation? Well,
Yeah,
tons, millions.
tons. Because it's just like if
Yeah.
you're into the thing, you're into the thing.
Right.
Like if
So
you're into comic books, you're into comics.
sure. So going back to now we've given we've said what we've said, and now we're diving into the cinematic universe, right? And why it had all these problems, right? And one of the main things, like we said, was it was rushed. Okay. Now you go into Batman v Superman, right? And that film, because it was rushed, was already a problem. But the other problem is that it tried to tell 5 million different stories that were actual comic book stories in one story, in one film, right? And it basically, you couldn't.
Sorry, I did not hear you just now. You're like paused.
Hey, had some digital issues, but what I was saying was that this film, they tried to tell too many stories within one movie. So you have the death of Superman in that movie. You have in Batman v Superman. You have the Dark Knight Returns in that movie. You have all these little things while still trying to tell the Justice League Inception story, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to tell all these stories in one movie, and talk about rushing, right? You're now, not only did you rush it by making this film in general, now within the film, you're rushing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try to hold on to one through line in that film and try to find one solid story within it. You can't.
Yeah, you can't. But the main thing, going back to what I said earlier, they should have made a Batman solo movie.
Yep.
To follow Man of Steel. Tell the Batman story. Then do exactly what Marvel did. Don't try and be successful at the same time. Why not just let yourself gradually be successful the same way Marvel did it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now,
I think that
tell the Flash. Hold on. Tell the Flash movie. Say the Flash movie, or do the Flash movie. Do the Wonder Woman movie, which is probably the best one amongst all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so.
Even though Aquaman was not that bad.
No, it's not. And I think that that time is going to be friendly to that film. I think that as time passes, people are going to kind of warm up to it more and more because it's good.
It's a good movie. And Wonder Woman 1 was good. And I think Wonder Woman 2 might be good.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited for
they look
the
good.
idea of a periodic superhero film, like a period film that's about superheroes. It honestly, I think, opens doors. I think that, not to get off on another tangent, but I think one thing DC is doing really right now is that they've kind of loosened up the hold on the overall story. so you can kind of start taking characters into whatever direction they want to take them in, including timelines, which is actually very, very, very cool.
Yeah. So perfect example. It's funny, in Batman v Superman, the best part of that movie to me is when Wonder Woman like makes her like real debut.
Oh my God. With
and the music, oh my God.
Yeah,
we're on the same page. I mean, even the subtle little scene. The subtle little scene where she gets knocked back and they do a shot of her face and she smiles and goes right back into it.
Yes.
I just got goosebumps.
Unmoved by Doomsday, like unfaltered.
Because she's the female Superman, right? Yep. So like those things were great. So there's little great tidbits, but as overall
amazing moments.
Yeah, it's brutal, right? So now I'm going to start going into something that I'm super passionate about, that I hate. I mean, really hate about Batman v Superman. And it's most of the ways that Batman was portrayed, or Bruce Wayne was portrayed, right?
Kills like 30 people.
First of all, the murdering of people would never happen, and he kills a billion people in the film. Okay?
It's such a hard thing as a, like, I'm sure for you being the diehard Batman fan you are, like when you watch it happen, it's just kind of it's painful.
Yeah, it's like he's murdering me inside.
Yeah, you're just watching this idea of your character. You're watching this character that you've grown up loving, and you feel like you're watching almost a character assassination piece.
Right.
This is not
I'm just saying the word no throughout the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
So now you have that. The murdering of people never would happen with him, okay? He would never do that because like you said, he's too smart. He knows how to save people and save the world. That's who Batman is. Write him that way because that's the way he was written, okay? Yep. That's number one. Number two, okay? He's the smartest man on the planet. He's the best detective in the world, and he is portrayed as the smartest man on the planet, which is why, like I said earlier, he can exist within this world and be able to perform the way he performs because he's smarter than everybody else. Yep. He's 8 steps ahead of Superman. He's 8 steps ahead of everyone, okay? So now he has this issue with Superman, which is a legitimate issue because he feels Superman is a liability.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a legitimate issue, which in the comic books, he did create something, a fail-safe, for lack of better words, for Superman, if Superman ever went awry.
Which is like very apropos for the character.
100%. Now, he creates this scepter with the kryptonite. He realizes that kryptonite is his weakness. He creates this scepter. You get now to the battle scene, right? Which looked cool, right? Looked like the comic book. The suit that he created looks like the comic book, right? It taken right out of the page, looked great, right? You get to the point where he's essentially beaten Superman. He's over him. He has a stab. He's going to stab him with this kryptonite and basically murder Superman, okay? Yeah. Superman utters the word Martha, and it's over. Right? He doesn't now want to murder Superman because their mothers have the same name. Now,
yeah, that's it.
First of all, no.
Yeah.
No.
To start, no.
No. You're not the amount of things that the man went through in the film to get to the point where he can actually stab Superman. Nobody would ever not stab Superman at that point because of that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense. Okay?
Absolutely.
Then you go further. Then he realizes, fine, we're going to just say he realizes that they have their mothers have the same name, and he's like okay with Superman. He throws the scepter away and leaves it. Okay, now, Batman is the smartest man on the planet. Yep. He has already recognized that kryptonite is probably the main weapon on this earth because a man like Superman exists. So you have to have this thing. Mm-hmm. He throws it and leaves it. He would never do that.
No.
Ever. Okay? No. these are some of the things that you're just like, you're watching this movie and you're like, why are you doing it? And what made you think that this was a good idea?
Well, that actually brings me back to X-Men, because I think that X-Men there's a line in X-Men that not just bothers me, bothers a lot of people, but there's a line in X-Men where Wolverine, in the end, now these guys, they suit up and they're ready for their first, mission as the X-Men, and they're in a plane and they're all wearing, black and everything like that. And then Wolverine kind of goofs about like what they're wearing, and he says like, you guys really wear this stuff? And then someone goes, what'd you expect, yellow spandex? And I remember as even a kid watching it, I thought, yes, like that is what I expect. Like, yes, absolutely. Like this, in fact, what you guys are doing is not because the idea is that black leather is somehow much more
better,
much better than yellow spandex. And you're like, well, I don't know if black leather is really that much different than the yellow spandex.
Right. Yeah. And doing that is not like saying that. It's not an Easter egg thing. That's more of like a fuck you thing to the fans.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it has like a lot more negative connotations than it's probably meant to, but I think that actually is that line is kind of how Hollywood has thought of comic book films as a whole. Is that for Hollywood, comic book films always amount to a costume, and they don't take it seriously, and they just think about the costume and the effects and not the characters. And I think DC is a victim of that mentality. I think that the DC films are a victim of the mentality of trying to be like other movies, whereas Marvel just took the properties they had and ran with it.
Yeah, great example, like what you said about Iron Man. They told the story of Iron Man, and it didn't matter that his suit was orange.
Yeah,
because of the way that they told his story, we already suspend disbelief now.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were all cool with it because we're huge fans, and we wanted to. Let me tell you something, just as a quick side note. The Iron Man suit, to me, my opinion, is the best adaptation taken from comic book to film of any superhero ever made.
Agreed 100%. I think that is, and it only got better with each film.
Oh
they really refined
it. Extremists kind of like
they really paid. I mean, honestly, in the end, the Iron Man as a character is going to be the most dedicated comic to movie franchise there's ever been.
Meanwhile, and the funny part about it is that in comic books, as real fans like we are, we know Iron Man was never ever as popular as he is this day. He never was.
I love telling people that too, because I think that it's funny that the Avengers became the main story that everyone kind of paid attention to about these films. Yeah,
even the Avengers.
You were a comic collector in the 90s. They'll tell you, anyone who collected comic books at that time will tell you the Avengers were not doing well. No one cared about Captain America. No one cared about Thor. No one cared about Iron Man. And basically,
X-Men were big.
The X-Men were always big. But I think they actually fell because of how good the Iron Man film was and how exciting the Avengers became. I think that what happened with the X-Men is that they had that same share of popularity for a time, but because it came out at a time where movies were thought better than comics, it was never treated with the respect that it really deserves. And I think that in the modern X-Men iterations that we've had is a lot of kind of filmmakers essentially trying to make up for lost time. Like all the modern X-Men films are, Logan was very good. Days of the Future Past was pretty good, but the rest of them, it's just them trying, and now they're just trying to make up for the mistakes that they've made with this franchise. And they're trying to kind of gather up the leftover pieces and create a franchise from that, when, you know, they should honestly, they should have started from the beginning a long time ago.
Well, now to wrap this, what we're talking about up here, Marvel has all the rights now, so they can start.
They got everything.
So that's great. But now, so now we talked about Batman v Superman, and then now you have this Justice League film, which in between you had the Wonder Woman film, then you had Justice League, right? It wasn't Aquaman was after Justice League, right?
It was after, yeah.
So you have the Justice League film, okay, and Superman is supposedly dead, but we all know he's not dead.
Yeah. Like who are they really even trying to fool?
Why tell that story when you know that he's not dead?
Yeah, it's
not necessary. If you're going to tell a Superman death story, wait until you have this book of stories or this cinematic universe that you can then kill him and have it be this thing, right? Don't kill him in the first movie of your universe. It doesn't make sense.
It's just such a bad idea that it's hard to look back on as being something that happened.
Right. So now you have this Justice League film, which is horrendous. Okay, it's a terrible movie. I'm sorry if anybody defends it. I can't. Yeah, I can't even talk. I can't even talk to you if you defend this movie.
You can't.
So now you have this Justice League film, and it's basically Batman trying to get everyone together because Superman is dead, right? Then it's the telling of the Steppenwolf character and all that, which is
who no one cares about.
Who no one cares about. They just needed a villain, like whatever. You have this film, and you have these characters now coming together, and because of the fact that they forced everything, it feels forced.
Well, you know, now that you mentioned Steppenwolf, it actually makes me think that, like, it's really Marvel isn't just the reason that DC, the DC cinematic universe failed. Like, a big part is just there were so many little mistakes made in getting it together. Like, now that you're mentioning it, like Steppenwolf as their villain for a Justice League film. You know, you have like the Justice League, and your first villain's going to be someone that I had to explain who Steppenwolf is so many times.
And we all know who, if you're going to do it, go big or go home, because you're already doing that anyway. So we all know who should have been the villain.
Yeah, like it was obviously Darkseid, you know? Like
they threw the little dream sequence, which makes no sense.
You had it in Man of Steel. You should have just gone with Darkseid immediately. You should have gone with Darkseid, if only because Marvel hadn't gotten to Thanos yet. You know, because this was Justice League came out before Infinity War.
Endgame. Yeah,
so they could have really kind of jumped it and just gone straight to Darkseid, but they wanted to kind of emulate what Marvel was doing to their detriment.
But the thing is that they weren't. It doesn't make sense. It's counter. It's like two sides of the film.
It's completely, it doesn't make counterintuitive. Sense.
Yeah, you were already rushing it, but then you don't want to rush it because you want to do what Marvel's doing. It just, if you wanted to do what Marvel was doing, you should have made solo movies to lead up to a Justice League movie.
You should have done what Marvel did.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense, right? So you know, you have the film, and then you have all the problems with that film. You know, with Snyder being exited, and then you have Joss Whedon, right?
Yeah, Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon comes.
I mean, and credit to Snyder. I feel like we should mention Snyder's daughter actually committed suicide during the
Is that
making.
True?
Yeah, Snyder.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Scott Snyder's daughter committed suicide during the filming and the shooting of Justice League. So Snyder left that project under pretty extraneous circumstances.
Don't do that with the mic.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No, Snyder left that film under pretty extraneous circumstances, with his daughter having committed suicide.
Right.
So it's.
I didn't even know that. I mean, it makes sense. And I wasn't even, not that you were saying that I was, but I didn't even know that, and I wasn't even ridiculing him leaving. Like I didn't.
No, but it's just an unfortunate addendum to the filming of that movie, where it's like, and I think that now, one thing that's rised from this that's kind of interesting is people kind of demanding Scott Snyder's cut, you know, of the film, because I think that one really huge mistake Justice League made was essentially trying to be the Avengers, when they really should have been the Justice League.
Right. Do a story that's like a Justice League story in the comic books.
Yeah, do something to suit your characters.
Right. Don't do what the Avengers did.
Absolutely.
Right. So now you have Justice League, and you have all these problems with it. Like I said, you have the Joss Whedon, the Snyder leaving. You have the mustache with Superman, because he was filming Mission Impossible Fallout, and it just looks terrible. Just wait until he's done. Like, don't do it, because you had to have known it looked terrible. You had to have known.
Didn't spend enough on the special.
Yeah, that's another weird thing. Yeah,
I don't know. It's like it becomes like the more we're getting into it, the more it becomes kind of like, well, it's just so many things. It really kind of makes you feel like it was never gonna work.
Right, and you know what? It was the beginning and how they approached it that made it never work. Because if you think about it, right? If you think about cause and effect, if you don't rush it and you do it the way Marvel was doing it, then you don't get into a point where Superman is filming another movie because you need to rush him into Justice League, because Justice League wouldn't be happening at the same time. You would have known when Justice League is going to happen and known when Henry Cavill is available.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just whatever, right? So, I'm no movie maker, I'm no filmmaker, I'm no genius, but this is just like, it just makes total sense to me. Like, right. So now you have Justice League, and it was just brutal. And you combine all these characters, and you didn't do it right, because you didn't make those movies like seeing the Flash, seeing Cyborg, even seeing Aquaman in that film. We didn't care as much because we hadn't seen them in their own films.
Right.
So now we're not caring as much because you're just introducing these people that, like me, I know who Cyborg is, but I never liked him as a character, so I don't know really his story.
Yeah.
Aquaman, I have my things with Aquaman because he just is in the water, and what do you do with him? Like what happens with him?
I'm not saying anything.
I know. We've had this discussion.
Arms crossed.
Yeah. So you have that, and then you have the Flash, who I have said millions of things about.
One of the greatest comic book characters of all time.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, and I never will, but it's fine. We're good friends. So but either way, right? If you maybe tell the story of the Flash, and you tell and you give him his standalone, maybe someone like me now feels differently about it watching him in Justice League.
Yeah.
Right? But you didn't do that. You just introduced this person, and you're like, how?
And I can't imagine what it is for, like, considering we've read so many comic books. It all seems kind of, when you see these characters, even if there's no storyline to go with them, you kind of recognize them. Whereas with the Flash, if I was to show someone Justice League, I don't know how I would even, go into, this is why this is here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can't even... There's no justification for it.
No, it's all shoehorned. It's all shoehorned in, and it's all by the Deus ex machina of Wonder Woman introducing superheroes to Batman in the Batman vs Superman. She kind of just goes, well, this exists, and that's it. There's no origin story. These guys are all already here. And it's all.
Well, no, actually, it's Lex Luthor.
Right. Yeah.
And then Batman finds out about it and then sends it to Wonder Woman.
Right. So that I think that's like another example of kind of, the mistakes made, where it's just there was just too much story to be told in such a short amount of time.
Right. So now, you have that film, and it comes out, and you have the Aquaman film that comes out later, and it was good. It's not amazing, but it's decent. But at that point, it's like, it doesn't matter, right? You've already done so many bad things that you coming out with a good Aquaman movie doesn't save anything.
No, yeah.
Well, right.
So So now to move it a little forward, what do you think is the way to move it forward? Do you think that right now they're doing a good, do you think that what they're doing right now is a good idea in terms of like their because it seems like they've kind of done away with the cinematic universe of DC, and they've decided to just kind of make these multiple franchises,
Right.
you know? So do you think that that's a good idea, or do you think it's they should have maybe tried to stick with the Justice League thing and try to like move it forward?
So I think that I think that anything that you do now that's not a universe because of what Marvel did, especially when you're doing comic books, is not the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know and understand comic books as one universe, right?
Yeah.
So forget about even Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm-hmm.
We know comic books as a universe.
Right.
So when we read comic books, remember, going away from movies,
Mm-hmm.
when we read a comic book and we're reading Batman, we're actually reading the comic book. While we're reading, in the back of our heads, know that Superman exists in the story.
Right. We know that he's in the ether.
Right. So because that's the case, and because of what Marvel did, I don't think any comic book movie should ever make movies that aren't possibly thinking of a universe.
Right. It's like, at this point, it's like well, I do think that there's something to be said for like standalone stories on their own, but I do think that it's like, at this point,
I'm not saying you don't tell. Well, listen, Thor: The Dark World is really a standalone movie
in a way, yeah.
But it exists in the universe, so you could still do the Robert Pattinson film. And
it's part of what makes comic books great, right?
That's
like,
what I mean.
The idea, yeah.
That's my point. So you can still do the Pattinson film that you're doing, the Batman, and have it be its own story, and not have one character pop up in that film, but we all know that those people exist within that universe, right?
Right.
So you could still do it, right? And now answering your question, how do I feel? I feel like it should have been completely scrapped, and you should just start over, because no matter what, people are going to see a Superman film. Mm-hmm. People are going to see a Batman movie. It doesn't matter. Just scrap it. People are gonna go watch it.
Yeah, if you have a good story there, people want to see it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like do it, right? And another thing I wanted to mention was Suicide Squad.
Oh, so we didn't even talk about that.
No, I know. I wanted to mention that the best part of Suicide Squad is the beginning, when Batman is in there, and he's involved with characters that we want to see him involved with.
Right.
Harley Quinn, like Deadshot.
Mm-hmm.
Deadshot. Like, we want to see those things, right? And that was the best part of that movie. That movie's terrible. It is god awful.
Yep.
Jared Leto's Joker, god awful. I mean, why?
We could honestly do another episode on how bad Jared Leto is as the Joker.
Right. Why is Jared Leto Machine Gun Kelly playing Joker?
Yeah, I don't understand. Literally, I can't imagine anything I want to see less than a kind of millennial friendly Joker.
It's ridiculous.
It's just absurd.
So I mean, that movie didn't work. So, but again, that movie didn't work because of all the things that they did wrong to start.
Right.
So it did. So now if you did everything the way you were supposed to, and then you came out with a Suicide Squad, obviously hoping that the Suicide Squad movie would be a little better, but it might have been better received.
Absolutely.
And then the only reason they made a part 2 or with Harley Quinn is because she's hot and people want to see her in the getup.
I mean, yeah.
That's
at this point, when I see movies like that made, I'm just thinking like it must be they must have amazing merchandise deals.
Yeah.
Or it has to be some form of Chinese money that's like really beneficial for them, because they're just I don't. And being someone that I try to keep my finger on the pulse, like I don't know anyone that cares about.
That's the other thing. Who cares about this Harley Quinn film?
I don't know anyone that cares. Like I don't know anyone that like, I think the new Suicide Squad film by James Gunn has a lot of potential.
Well,
because
because
he's an
he's going to come
amazing creator,
and he's going to
filmmaker.
come in and change the whole kind of culture and feel of it,
Yeah, yeah,
like what he did with Guardians. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So I think
which,
that that has a lot of potential because I trust
yeah,
the creator behind it. But
sure.
Harley Quinn in the no, Birds of Prey and the
Yeah.
Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Yeah. It's like, what?
I just don't know anyone who like I don't know who that film is for.
Right.
Basically, it's not
Well, yeah.
for
Okay.
comic book fans.
Well, so now going to that and staying with that kind of thought process, like you said, who cares about them? Like, not a lot of people, right? Now going to this Joker Joaquin Phoenix movie, it's a good film. If you come in and you go, that movie sucks, you're just not. Just be smarter than that.
Yeah.
Don't just say don't just disagree with it because everybody else says it, right?
Yeah, there's no we don't have any time for contrarian opinions.
Yeah, it's
here.
ridiculous. It's a great film. It's a great movie. There's a reason why he won these awards. He did an amazing job. There's no doubt. Okay. But I will say this. I myself don't want to see a Joker movie that Batman's not in.
Right.
Because Batman is the reason Joker exists.
Yeah.
Joker isn't the reason Batman exists.
No.
Well, in the storyline, maybe because of villains and all that. But
which is okay to me. Like I'm okay with that idea. I'm very glad that film didn't do too much to make. I'm glad that film didn't do too much to make the Joker kind of. I think they made him much of a relatable position, which would have really bothered me. You know, like I because in my opinion,
Can you say what you said again?
Oh, I'm glad that the film didn't give Joker too much of a relatable position because in my mind, Alfred in a comic book once said that Joker is a storm to be weathered. And I never forgot that, like I like the Joker as kind of this almost mythical figure of relatable and friendly.
Right. Be careful. Your sound's going in and out.
Yeah. Mike is deciding to, without me touching it, be real.
Yeah, be careful. Yeah, I mean, and so like that film, they did a lot of things, and again, movie's great, but and they did introduce Bruce Wayne, right? They did as a kid, but I don't like what they did to his father and how they made him an asshole. Like, don't just do that for the sake of doing it.
Because the story's already there.
The story's there. Why are you don't have to, just because it's a Joker film and they clearly wanted you to feel bad for this person. That was the idea, right? Just because that's what you're doing, you don't have to change the story and make Thomas Wayne an asshole. The whole point is that Thomas Wayne is one of the greatest people in the DC universe, and he was brutally murdered in an alleyway, which makes Bruce Wayne want to do what he's doing.
Right. He's an inspiring figure.
Exactly.
He's meant to inspire the future of that series, which is Batman, and not be this kind of, because it's like the world that the movie sets up is a world where why would you need a Joker is fighting for the little guy as far as that movie's concerned.
Joker's like the hero, the anti-hero.
Batman some kind of conservative hero to smash the little guy? I don't really think that was ever the intention.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to do it that way.
Yeah,
but anyway, so going to that, so I just feel like with DC, I think your point that you made is one of the biggest points, is their relatability. And they try to make films like what Marvel was doing, but you can't because the characters are so different. Perfect example.
These aren't people. Batman is not a person.
No,
Superman is not a person. You can't relate to Batman. You can't relate to Superman. You can't relate to Wonder Woman. Like, these are not people that just you grew up with.
Right.
These are mythical, godlike figures.
Right. And a great example, of of that is the fact that like it's so funny how Marvel has almost no secret identities.
No.
There are two characters that I could think of from the top of my head that have secret identities, and it's Daredevil and Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Who
and
else?
Even them have, like, how many stories can you name right now where their identities are being revealed completely?
But now you go to DC, everybody has a secret identity.
Yeah, right?
All of them, right?
Yeah.
And I love a good secret identity. I actually was upset when in Far From Home they revealed his I don't like that, but I understand what they're doing, whatever. I just don't like it. But like, so they're different. That the point I'm making is that they're so different, right? So don't do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Do the DC films the way that they've been written for decades.
Make the gods.
Yeah,
like,
you have all of these stories, like these stories already for you. You don't even have to do a lot of work.
You have the stories, and you have it's all already been written. Like all this stuff's already been written. You don't have to, and that's where Marvel's really kind of figured it out. And movie we didn't talk about at all, but I think is worth mentioning is Sin City. Sin City, I think it was
Snyder.
A perfect. No, Sin City is Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller.
Oh, you're talking about written, but Snyder directed it.
No, he didn't. Robert Rodriguez directed it.
I thought Zack Snyder directed Sin City.
No. Sin City is Robert Rodriguez directing as well as Frank Miller as an assistant director.
Well, Frank Miller, because he originally wrote it.
He was the original creator, but Robert Rodriguez actually made sure that Frank Miller got that director's credit. Robert Rodriguez was almost thrown out of the Directors Guild of America for demanding that Frank Miller be given a director credit in that film. But that film, I think, should get credit as a film that took its source material completely seriously, and transferred it almost word for word onto the screen.
Yeah.
And panel for panel on the screen. And it showed people that the comic books are already movies. We don't need the movies to tell people how comic books are. Comic books are already great.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I don't know. I guess the Snyder look, it looks like how Snyder would direct.
Yeah. It's got like that kind of, the look of Sin City even is so original,
you're right.
It pioneered a style of film.
Which that movie was great too.
Yeah. It was excellent.
And then, you have, So I mean, to kind of like put a button on it and wrap it all up, I think a lot of the points that we made are justifiable points as to why, they failed.
Yeah.
they failed. There's no way around it, even though you want to say, oh, Justice League made money. Yeah, in its first weekend.
It did well, but I mean, does it matter now?
No, it doesn't. And it's not making money the way Marvel's making money. No, not even close, right?
No, we're still talking about Endgame. No one cares about Justice League.
And it's a year later.
Yeah.
And also, you have, which we didn't touch on, which we could always do another part 2 to this down the road, but the universe that the CW has created with DC has been popular.
Yeah, and has done very successful.
Right. So, it's there. The characters are there to do it. It's possible, right? So what we're asking is just take it right out of the book. Do it its justice.
Yeah.
Do it the way it should be done.
Respect the comic.
Right. Respect the writers. Respect these people. And we're going to be happy about it.
Yep. Don't
follow anybody. Don't do what anybody else is doing. Do what is there already for you to do. Right.
Exactly.
So that's kind of me wrapping it up. Anything else you want to kind of throw in there?
No, man. I'm looking forward to, seeing where this all goes with comic book films, as a whole, DC and Marvel, seeing where we're all headed.
For sure. Definitely. Like I'm excited for the Batman. Yeah. I wasn't excited originally with what he looked like.
Me neither, but I think Robert Pattinson is so good. Like,
I think he's going to be fine.
Such a good actor that I'm kind of like, I'm kind of ready for this. I'm ready for this.
I wasn't, when he was cast, I was actually happy. I wasn't even like, I had like zero kind of like about it, right?
No, yeah,
But
I'm
when
ready for this.
But when I saw the suit, I was like, eh. But
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that they're doing the Batman and they're telling this detective style story. That's what's been said. Who knows?
And I
but
think it's smart for them to do their own thing, you know, kind of tell your own story, you know, because it's like at this point, if you're either do what's already written or do your own thing. If you try to make some sort of hodgepodge of all of it,
right,
then you get, you know, Superman 4 and you know,
and Justice League and
your
Batman
Justice
v
League
Superman.
and exactly.
Right. Anyway, I mean, again, we could always come back and do a part 2 and see, and you know, maybe after the Batman gets released, or whatever.
We have to do a review.
Yeah, we'll do like a review of it or something. But all right, man, this is a good conversation. Obviously, we could talk about this crap for days. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. So
okay, all right.
So we're gonna sign off. Thanks everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe. My co-host Dan. Peace out, brother.
Likewise, man.